The crystal glass trembled in Victoria's hand when she saw her 8-year-old daughter disappear among the tables of the most expensive restaurant in the city. The investors' dinner was taking place at that exact moment, Christmas Eve, which would decide whether she would remain CEO of her own company or be removed by the board. Every second mattered. Every impression counted. And now Jasmine was gone. Victoria Chun was the first black woman to lead a financial technology company valued at billions. She had built it from the ground up, facing closed doors, skeptical investors, and a market that never expected to see her at the top. Her impeccable posture, her tailored suits, and her ability to turn numbers into compelling narratives had made her a legend. But that night, under the golden lights of the private hall, she felt the ground collapsing beneath her. Jasmine had been born deaf. Victoria loved her daughter with an intensity that frightened her, but she treated deafness the way she treated corporate crises, with efficiency, planning, and solutions. State-of-the-art hearing aids. Therapy 3 times a week. Schedules organized in colorful spreadsheets. Everything except learning sign language. That required time Victoria simply did not have. Besides, she believed Jasmine needed to adapt to the world, not the other way around. The hall was filled with gray-haired men and women wearing sparkling jewelry. Conversations about markets, mergers, and acquisitions echoed through the room. Victoria had brought Jasmine because she couldn't find a babysitter at the last minute, and because she thought it was important for her daughter to see the real world. Jasmine sat beside her, quiet, with a tablet in her hands and headphones that made no difference at all. During the presentation of the third quarter numbers, Victoria noticed Jasmine shifting uncomfortably in her chair. The girl looked around with that expression Victoria knew all too well, lost, invisible, overwhelmed. But she couldn't stop. Not at that moment. Richard Corbin, an influential member of the board, was sitting across from her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He had been questioning her decisions for months, building alliances behind the scenes. When Victoria finally looked to the side again, the chair was empty. Her heart raced. She discreetly stood up, apologizing with a professional smile, and went out in search of her daughter. The restaurant's corridors were labyrinths of red velvet and antique mirrors. Victoria walked quickly, her heels echoing on the marble, calling Jasmine's name in a low voice, knowing her daughter wouldn't hear. That was when she heard something different. Not words. Not voices. But laughter. Jasmine's laughter. Victoria followed the sound to a service area at the back of the restaurant. There, sitting on the floor next to a cleaning cart, was Jasmine. And beside her, a man in a navy blue uniform and a boy about 10 years old. The 3 of them were talking in sign language. Their hands moved quickly, expressively, creating a language Victoria did not understand. And Jasmine was smiling. Smiling in a way Victoria hadn't seen in months. The man noticed her presence and stood up quickly. He was tall, with tired features and calloused hands. The boy beside him, fair-skinned with freckles on his face, naturally held his father's hand. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the man said, making a respectful gesture. "I'm Daniel, from the maintenance team. This is my son, Leo. We found your daughter here and she seemed to need someone to talk to." Victoria looked at Jasmine, who was still smiling, her eyes shining in a way that cut deep inside her. A stranger understood her daughter better than she did. A man who probably earned in a month what she spent on a dinner had created, in minutes, the connection Victoria had struggled to build for years. "Thank you for taking care of her," Victoria said, her voice coming out colder than she intended. "Jasmine, we need to go back." Jasmine made a sign with her hands. Daniel translated, "She's asking if she can stay 5 more minutes." Victoria was about to refuse when her phone vibrated. A message from her assistant. "Corbin is asking questions about your absence. Come back urgently." She looked at her daughter, at Daniel, at Leo. There was something wrong with that situation, but she couldn't define what it was. Why was her daughter so happy away from her? Why was a maintenance worker there, on that very night, at the exact moment when everything depended on her presence in the hall? 5 minutes, Victoria said, returning to the dinner with a tight heart and a strange feeling that something bigger was happening, something she still couldn't see. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Leave a comment telling us what you thought and which city or country you're watching from. Your participation makes all the difference, so we can continue bringing stories that touch the heart. Victoria returned to the hall with her posture straight and her professional smile perfectly adjusted, but her mind was divided between the numbers projected on the screen and the image of Jasmine laughing with two strangers in the back of the restaurant. She slid back into her chair as Richard Corbin presented his concerns about the company's expansion strategy. Corbin was a 60-year-old man with impeccable white hair and an impressive history on corporate boards. He spoke with the confidence of someone who had never needed to prove his worth, every word calculated to sound reasonable while planting seeds of doubt. That night, he was using the language that frightened investors the most: risk, volatility, lack of focus. "Victoria has undeniable talent," Corbin said, gesturing with a hand holding a glass of red wine. "But leadership requires total presence. It requires sacrifices. And frankly, I have been questioning whether dividing attention between personal demands and corporate responsibilities isn't affecting crucial decisions." Victoria felt the blow. He didn't mention Jasmine directly, but everyone at the table understood the message. A CEO with a child with special needs could not maintain focus. It was the oldest argument in the world, repackaged as corporate concern. "My personal life does not interfere with my strategic decisions," Victoria replied, keeping her voice steady. The results of the last quarter speak for themselves. 23% growth, expansion into 4 new markets, partnerships with 3 of the largest financial institutions in the country. Corbin smiled, that smile Victoria had learned to fear. Of course. But past results do not guarantee future stability, especially when there are distractions. The word hung in the air like poison. Victoria clenched her fists under the table. She had faced men like Corbin her entire life. Men who smiled while building her downfall. Men who never had to prove they could be fathers and professionals at the same time because no one ever questioned that of them. That was when the restaurant manager approached discreetly and whispered something in Corbin's ear. His expression changed subtly, a barely concealed satisfaction crossing his features. He stood up, asked to be excused, and left the hall. Victoria watched him, suspicious. There was something orchestrated about that night. She felt it in her bones. Taking advantage of Corbin's absence, Victoria went back to the rear to get Jasmine. Daniel and Leo were still there, now teaching the girl a hand game that made her laugh silently, her shoulders shaking with pure joy. Victoria stopped at the entrance, watching. When was the last time she had made her daughter laugh like that? Daniel noticed her presence and made a sign to Jasmine, who immediately ran to her mother. Victoria knelt down, trying to smile, but Jasmine only waved politely and looked back at Leo with obvious sadness. "She's amazing," Daniel said, stepping closer. "Smart, observant. Leo loves meeting other deaf children. He was born deaf too, just like me." Victoria blinked, surprised. "You're deaf?" Daniel nodded, pointing to the nearly invisible device in his ear. "Cochlear implant. It works well, but sign language has always been my first language. It's my son's language too. It's the language of the heart." Those words hit Victoria like a punch. The language of the heart. She had never thought of it that way. To her, sign language was a tool, an alternative, something Jasmine would use only if she couldn't adapt to the hearing world. But to Daniel, to Leo, to Jasmine, it was identity. It was belonging. "Have you worked here long?" Victoria asked, trying to divert from the discomfort she felt. 3 years, Daniel replied. "Hard work, but it's honest. Leo and I manage well. Tonight was my night shift, but my supervisor asked me to stay specifically in this area during the special dinner. I thought it was strange, but I don't question orders." Something clicked in Victoria's mind. Specifically in this area. During the special dinner. Corbin leaving after receiving a message. The feeling that everything was being manipulated grew stronger. Before she could process it, Corbin returned to the corridor, accompanied by 2 restaurant security guards. His face displayed an expression of manufactured concern. "Victoria, I'm afraid we have a serious problem," he said, looking directly at Daniel. "Some valuable jewelry has disappeared from the investor's private dressing room. And security cameras show that only members of the maintenance team had access to the area over the past 2 hours." Daniel went pale. Leo clutched his father's hand, his eyes wide with fear. Jasmine looked from one adult to the other, sensing the tension even without hearing the words. "This is ridiculous," Victoria said, her voice sharp. "Daniel was taking care of my daughter." "Exactly," Corbin shot back, sounding almost compassionate. He had the perfect opportunity. A convenient distraction while committing the theft. I'm very sorry, Victoria, but we need to involve the authorities. Your daughter may even have been used as an alibi. Victoria looked at Daniel, at the genuine panic in his eyes, at Leo trembling beside his father, at Jasmine confused and frightened. And then she looked at Corbin, at the calculated gleam in his gaze. In that moment, she understood. This wasn't about a theft. It was about her. It was about destroying her credibility, proving that she was negligent, showing that bringing her daughter to a corporate event led to chaos. Corbin had set everything up. Victoria raised her hand, silencing Corbin before he could continue. Her mind was working at full speed, connecting dots that had previously seemed random. The specific request for Daniel to stay in that area. The convenient timing of the jewelry's disappearance. Corbin's barely concealed satisfaction. It all had the hallmarks of a perfectly crafted setup. No one is calling any authorities yet, Victoria said, her voice low but filled with authority. Daniel, do you have any proof of where you've been for the past 2 hours? Daniel shook his head, defeated. Only here, with Leo and your daughter. There are no cameras in the service area. Of course there weren't. Corbin had chosen the perfect spot. Victoria looked at Jasmine, who was watching everything with frightening attentiveness. The girl might not hear, but she saw everything. Her dark, intelligent eyes captured every expression, every movement, every tension in the air. That was when Victoria had an idea. She knelt down to Jasmine's height and took out her phone. She opened the Notes app and typed, "Did you see anything strange today? Anyone different in the corridors?" Jasmine read it, thought for a moment, and then took her mother's phone. She began to draw something quickly. A man in a suit. A corridor. A door. And then she drew something that made Victoria's heart race, the man carrying a small dark bag. Victoria showed the drawing to Daniel. "Do you recognize this area?" Daniel studied the drawing and nodded. "It's the corridor that leads to the private dressing room. I passed through there once when I was asked to check a leak in the adjacent bathroom." "What time did that happen?" "Around 7 p.m. Before I found Jasmine." Victoria checked the time. The theft had supposedly occurred between 7:15 and 8 o'clock. Daniel had an alibi, but not a witness who could speak. Except Jasmine. Except an 8-year-old deaf girl whose testimony no one would take seriously in a corporate environment. Unless Victoria made it count. She stood up and faced Corbin. "I'm going to investigate this personally before involving any external authorities. Do you mind accompanying me to the security room?" Corbin hesitated for a fraction of a second. Victoria saw it. He had expected resistance, drama, chaos. He hadn't expected her to take control of the situation. "Of course," he finally said. "But I see no need to delay the inevitable. The evidence is clear." As they walked, Victoria discreetly sent a message to her assistant. "I need all security footage from the last 3 hours. All angles. And check who authorized Daniel's shift change to this area today." The security room was small, filled with monitors showing different angles of the restaurant. The security manager, a middle-aged man named Thomas, received them with a tense expression. "Mr. Corbin already informed me about the situation," Thomas said, avoiding Victoria's gaze. The jewelry disappeared from the dressing room between 7:15 and 8 o'clock. Only 3 employees had access to the area, 2 waiters and the maintenance professional. "Show me the footage," Victoria ordered. Thomas hesitated, looking at Corbin. That was all Victoria needed to see. He was involved. "Now," Victoria repeated, using the tone that made boardrooms fall silent. The footage began to play. Victoria saw Daniel passing through the corridor at 7 o'clock, carrying a toolbox. He entered the bathroom adjacent to the dressing room, stayed there for 15 minutes, and left. Nothing suspicious. But then, at 7:35, another man appeared in the corridor. A man in a dark suit. "Pause there," Victoria said. "Zoom in on the image." Thomas obeyed reluctantly. The enlarged image showed a man from behind, but something gleamed on his left hand. Victoria recognized it immediately, a specific university class ring, with a ruby in the center. The same ring Corbin wore. "Interesting," Victoria murmured. "This man isn't an employee, right? He's dressed like a guest." Thomas swallowed hard. Corbin remained impassive, but Victoria noticed his hands clench slightly. "Continue the footage," she ordered. The man in the suit entered the dressing room, stayed there for less than 3 minutes, and came out carrying something small in his pocket. Then he turned slightly to check the corridor. His face partially appeared on the camera. It was Corbin. The silence in the room was suffocating. Victoria felt a mix of anger and satisfaction. He had stolen the jewelry himself to frame Daniel and create the perfect scandal. A negligent CEO whose carelessness allowed a criminal employee access to investors. The headline would have written itself. "Is there any explanation for this?" Victoria asked calmly, turning to Corbin. He maintained his composure for a few more seconds before realizing the game was over. "You don't understand the pressure this company is under. The impossible decisions that have to be made. I was trying to protect our investors from a distracted leader." "You were trying to bring me down," Victoria corrected. "Using an innocent man and his son as pawns. Putting a deaf child in the middle of your corporate war." The mention of Jasmine ignited something in her. Victoria thought of her daughter waiting outside with Daniel and Leo, not fully understanding the danger she had been placed in. She thought of how many times she had ignored Jasmine during meetings, treated her like a problem to be managed instead of a person to be understood. Corbin tried to regain control. "No one is going to believe this. I'm a respected member of this board for years. You're a CEO under pressure, trying to divert attention from your own failures." Victoria smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Thomas, make a complete copy of this footage. And Corbin, prepare yourself. Because in 10 minutes, I'm going to show every investor in that hall exactly who you are." Victoria returned to the main hall with Corbin behind her, followed by Thomas carrying a tablet with the recordings. The murmur of conversations ceased when she stepped onto the small platform where the projector was located. All the investors watched her with curiosity. Some with concern. Corbin tried to maintain a confident posture, but Victoria could see sweat beginning to form on his forehead. "I apologize for the interruption," Victoria began, her voice filling the hall with natural authority. "But a serious incident occurred tonight, and everyone here deserves to know the full truth before making any decision about the future of this company." She gestured to Thomas, who connected the tablet to the projector. The large screen lit up with images from the security camera. Victoria narrated each frame as the footage played, showing Daniel innocently passing through the corridor, then Corbin entering the dressing room, leaving with something in his pocket, his face partially visible, his unmistakable ring. The hall erupted in shocked murmurs. One of the main investors, a woman named Margaret Hayes, stood up abruptly. "Richard, is that you in the footage?" Corbin tried to laugh, but the sound came out forced. "This is a distorted interpretation. I went into the dressing room to get my own coat." Victoria is clearly desperate, creating narratives to divert attention from her own incompetence. Victoria waited for silence to return. Then calmly she said, "Thomas, please show the second recording. The one from the parking lot." A new image appeared on the screen. Corbin walking to his car at 8:10 p.m., opening the trunk, placing something inside a black gym bag. The same bag that appeared in Jasmine's drawing. "We searched your car, Richard," Victoria said softly. "With your permission, of course. The jewelry is there. Along with a letter already written for the press, detailing a security scandal at the company, blaming me for negligence." Corbin's face went from red to white. Margaret Hayes turned to him with evident disgust. "You planned all of this? You stole jewelry from the investors themselves to frame an innocent employee." "It wasn't an innocent employee I intended to frame," Corbin finally exploded, losing all composure. "It was her. Victoria and her obsession with proving she can be a mother and a CEO at the same time. She brought a child to a business dinner. A child with special needs. Is that leadership? Is that focus?" The silence that followed was glacial. Victoria felt every word she wanted to scream, but then she heard a different sound. Small footsteps. She turned and saw Jasmine entering the hall, holding Daniel's hand. Leo came right behind, also holding his father's hand. Jasmine stopped in the middle of the hall, looking directly at her mother. Then, slowly, she began to make signs with her hands. Fluid, expressive movements, full of meaning that Victoria did not understand. But Daniel understood. And Leo understood. Daniel stepped forward, his voice emotional. She's saying that you're the bravest person she knows. That she sees you fight every day. That she's not a burden, and that she's sorry if you think she is. She's saying she loves you, but she wishes you would learn to talk to her for real. The words hit Victoria like a high-speed train. Tears burned in her eyes, something she hadn't allowed herself in years. She stepped down from the platform and walked to Jasmine, kneeling in front of her daughter. For the first time that night, for the first time in a long time, she truly saw Jasmine. Not as a project, not as a responsibility, but as a whole, complete person, with a voice Victoria had refused to learn. Victoria tried to make a sign, awkward and uncertain, something she had once seen online. "I love you." Jasmine gently corrected her mother's hand position, and then hugged her tightly. The entire hall watched in silence, witnessing something more important than any merger or acquisition. Margaret Hayes broke the silence. "Richard, you are immediately removed from the board. Legal measures will be taken. And Victoria, you have my vote of confidence." A leader who can recognize her mistakes, protect the innocent, and still love deeply is exactly the kind of person who should run this company. Other investors voiced their agreement. Corbin tried to protest, but 2 security guards were already approaching him, guiding him out of the hall. His expression was one of total defeat. Victoria stood up, still holding Jasmine's hand. She looked at Daniel and Leo. "Thank you. You saved more than my company today. You saved my relationship with my daughter." Daniel smiled, a tired but genuine smile. "We didn't do anything more than give her what every child deserves, to be seen and understood." Victoria nodded, a silent promise forming in her heart. She looked at the investors, at the people who decided her future, and said, "I will take a 3-month break from executive leadership. I will learn sign language. I will truly get to know my daughter. And when I return, I will be a better leader precisely because of that." Margaret Hayes began to applaud. Others joined in. The sound echoed through the hall, but Victoria knew Jasmine could not hear it. So she did something different. She began to clap slowly, in the style of the deaf community, hands waving in the air. Jasmine saw it. And smiled. 3 months later, Victoria walked into the same restaurant that had been the stage for the most transformative night of her life. But this time, everything was different. She wasn't wearing a suit. She wore casual, comfortable clothes. And by her side, Jasmine walked confidently, smiling at the environment that had once suffocated her. Daniel and Leo were waiting for them at a table near the window. Snow was falling outside, covering the city with a soft white blanket. It was Christmas Eve again, but there were no investors this time. Just family. A family Victoria had never imagined having. "Hello," Victoria signed to Daniel and Leo, her movements now fluid and natural. 3 months of intensive classes, daily practice, and conversations in sign language with Jasmine had changed everything. She still made mistakes, still needed to ask for things to be repeated sometimes, but now she spoke her daughter's language. The language of the heart, as Daniel had said that night. Jasmine ran to hug Leo, and the two began chatting animatedly about a game they were creating together. Victoria watched with a smile that no longer hurt. Seeing her daughter happy was no longer a reminder of her failures, but a celebration of possibilities. "How was your first day back?" Daniel asked in signs, accompanying them with his voice so Victoria could practice lip reading as well. Victoria thought about the morning. She had returned to the company, but as a different leader. During her absence, she had appointed an interim director who had kept everything running perfectly, proving that leadership was not about absolute control, but about building strong teams. When Victoria returned, she implemented new policies, flexible hours, extended parental leave, accessibility programs in all offices. "It was strange and wonderful," Victoria replied, using signs and words. "I discovered that I can be a better CEO by also being a better mother. The two things don't cancel each other out. They complement each other." Dinner unfolded amid conversations in sign language and silent laughter that echoed more deeply than any sound. Victoria watched Jasmine and felt something she hadn't felt in years: peace. Not the peace of efficiency or control, but the peace of being present, of truly seeing the people around her. At one point, Daniel shared that he had received a promotion. The restaurant, impressed by his integrity during the incident with Corbin, had promoted him to team supervisor. He had also started teaching sign language classes to interested employees. Leo was proud, signing excitedly about how his father was a hero. "You saved much more than my career that night," Victoria said to Daniel. "You saved my chance to be the mother Jasmine deserved to have from the beginning." Daniel shook his head. "You saved yourself. I only offered a different perspective. The courage to change was entirely yours." When dinner ended, Victoria ordered a special dessert she had requested in advance. The waiter brought a small cake, simply decorated, but with something special on top, the phrase "I love you" written in the manual alphabet of sign language. Jasmine saw it, and her eyes filled with tears. She looked at her mother, and Victoria signed, "It took me a long time to learn how to truly talk to you. But I promise I will never stop again." Jasmine threw herself into her mother's arms, and Victoria held her, feeling the precious weight of that embrace. All the missed meetings, all the important contracts, all the corporate achievements seemed insignificant compared to that moment. Leo and Jasmine asked to go outside and play in the covered outdoor area of the restaurant where they could see the snow. Victoria agreed, watching them run together, two children who had found in shared difference a deep friendship. "Do you know what I learned?" Victoria said to Daniel. "I spent years trying to make Jasmine fit into my world. It never occurred to me that I should enter hers. That her world was just as rich, just as complete as mine. Just different." Daniel smiled. "That's the mistake many people make. They see deafness as absence. But it's just a different way of existing. A culture, a language, a way of perceiving the world that is just as valid as any other." Victoria looked out the window, watching Jasmine and Leo drawing shapes in the snow, talking in signs under the soft light of the garden lamps. She thought about the woman she had been 3 months earlier, efficient, powerful, but deeply disconnected from the most important thing in her life. Corbin had been sued and convicted. The company was thriving under her renewed leadership. But none of that mattered as much as seeing her daughter happy, understood, loved in the language that was truly hers. "Thank you for being here tonight," Victoria said. "For continuing to be part of our lives. You gave us a gift we can never fully repay." "It's not about repayment," Daniel replied. "It's about building bridges. Between worlds, between people, between hearts." Jasmine and Leo built a bridge that night. "You and I just crossed it." Victoria nodded, knowing he was right. Some bridges are built by brave children who refuse to remain invisible. Who demand, simply by existing, that the world expand to include them. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment telling us what you thought and which city or country you're watching from. Stories of transformation and love need to be shared to inspire more people to build their own